Hi everybody, this is Dr. Eliana Aaron, Director of EMA Care. I hope everyone's doing well. Today we're going to talk about safely going to restaurants. Today is June 17th, 2020. And, in a lot of places restaurants have opened up. In Israel, they've been open up for quite a few weeks. And in America, depending on what state you're in, restaurants are starting to open up as well, and people want to go out. They want to go out to eat. During the shutdown, most restaurants were delivering, but the experience of leaving your house after being shut in for such a long time is a real social experience. It's a human experience that people want, and it's a reasonable thing. And I'm going to give you some guidelines so that you could try to go to restaurants safely. When restaurants first opened, I did not go. I generally had a rule of wait 2 weeks after things open up to see what the impact is. And when restaurants opened up, there wasn't a direct impact. In other words, 2 weeks later, we did not see significant increase numbers like we did after schools opened up in Israel. And so that's a good thing. On the other hand, you also have to use your good sense. And so I did not go to a restaurant for quite a while after they opened up because I really felt it was important to see what was going on. Some of the things to consider when you're in a restaurant is, first of all, as a customer, you have to trust that the restaurant is keeping to the regulations the way they're supposed to be. Now, I usually call in advance, especially if it's a restaurant that's not like a local restaurant, but a place that I would be traveling to. I would make a reservation and I would ask them in advance if they are being careful about the rules, if everyone's covering their nose and mouth, if they require masks for customers when they come into the restaurant. Obviously, when they're eating, you can't eat with the mask on, but at least the restaurant's staff should be wearing a mask all the time. Are they cleaning everything properly? Are they wiping the tables between customers? Are they spacing the tables appropriately? So if you look at a restaurant from the outside and you see that it's crowded and it's noisy and there's very loud music, so people have to talk loudly, and of course when we talk loudly we project our droplets much further. So those are not great environments to choose. This is not the time when I would advise people to go to bars. Bars are by nature crowded. That's a bad one. People are eating and drinking, which means that there aren't going to be masks. Because of the loud music, people are shouting and talking loudly to project their voice, which means that the amount of space you actually need between people should be even bigger than the 2 meters or the 6 feet. But in a bar, you can't do that because, first of all, no one can hear you 6 feet away in a bar. And second of all, that's not the point of a bar. The point of a bar is to meet people, to stand close to them, and to be social. So I don't recommend going to bars. Also, bars are not known to be the most airy, ventilated places. They tend to be, you don't want there to be a lot of windows in a bar because frankly, you don't want people to realize that time has passed. You don't want people to realize how long they've been there. You want them just to stay and drink and to have fun. So most bars tend to be dark and not very well ventilated. So that's another issue. So when you look at when you look at a restaurant, we already talked about bars. I don't recommend them. But when you look at a restaurant, get a good sense before you go in of what's going on. So my experience going to a restaurant was that the people standing in front of me online were not wearing masks. And I actually, once they left and were seated, I asked the attendant, why aren't they wearing masks? And she said, well, they don't have to wear masks. It's a restaurant. And that is not true. People have to wear masks unless they are actively eating. Okay, so that's the rule. And that means that when people are waiting in line to get into a restaurant, they need to be wearing masks. And I explained this to her. of course, then I also explained to her that I work with the health officials here, so that kind of made her realize, oh, I better tell people to wear masks. There's a lot of misunderstandings, and I don't think the higher ups in the restaurant business are necessarily telling the other people what the rules are or how to enforce or implement them. What she did then is she took our temperatures, and she actually like sanitized our hands with alcohol, which I thought was really great actually. And of course we asked to be seated outside. I took a look on the inside of the restaurant and I saw that people were spaced, a nice distance from each other, certainly enough of a distance to make it safe. I believe the rule is 1.5 meters that the table should be. I believe it was probably even closer to 2 meters apart. And we chose to be outdoors, and I do recommend, if you can, and obviously not everybody can do this, depends on where you live and what the weather is, but if you can go to a restaurant that has a large outdoor seating area, that is preferable. Fresh air is by far the safest place to go. We haven't had a huge amount of outbreaks or new cases or clusters from outdoor airy spaces. We just haven't. Even in Tel Aviv, there have been crowded beaches, even though it's illegal, and we just haven't had a huge number of outbreaks because it's very well ventilated. So being outdoors is a tremendous advantage. I do recommend it. You don't have to worry about food being contaminated, okay? We discussed this way at the beginning of this coronavirus, but you don't get coronavirus with food. Okay, it just doesn't, that's not how we get the disease. So you don't have to worry that the food is going to come and you can't eat it. What I did do is I took a note that the actual tables did not have anything on them when we arrived, and that is how it's supposed to be. Normally we go to a restaurant, there's a napkin, there's salt and pepper. If you go to a diner type place, then there's going to be like a paper napkin dispenser. All of these things, and the candle, if it's a nicer restaurant, all these things are now gone because they don't want there to be any things on the table that could be shared by other people. So I was actually very happy to see that. And then once we sat down, they gave us cutlery. Now, I asked them to re-wipe the table when I got there. First of all, when it's outdoors, it gets dusty, so just a good idea to keep the table clean, nothing to do with corona. But I wanted to see for myself that they were doing it. It made me feel better. I wanted to relax. For me to relax, I need to know it was done properly. I asked for one of the wipes myself, and I actually wiped down the handles of the cutlery that we had, and then I was done. The water bottle came, I wiped that down also. All the things that we were going to touch that other people had touched, I wiped it down. And then I just said, you know what? And now we're good. And that's basically what we did. We wore our masks until the food came or until we decided to drink water. And because you're sitting pretty close to somebody, it's not a problem communicating with a mask. And if you're outdoors and the weather is nice, it could be, it's not great to wear a mask, but it's not a terrible thing either. So we did wear a mask. When the food came, we took the mask off. When I went back into the restaurant to look at desserts, which of course is not a good idea post-corona, the 10 pounds that everyone has gained. But, when you haven't been out of your house eating in a long time, you just want to have the full experience. So when I went back into the restaurant, I put my mask back on, of course. When we used the bathroom, the advice that I had was, first of all, you wear your mask and you go to the bathroom and then you clean your hands. And when you open up the door after you clean your hands, you use a paper towel. And that way, any germs that could be on the door handle, you're not going to get. And the key here is just wash your hands a lot, wash your hands a lot. So they cleaned our hands when we got there. If we needed the washroom or to wash our hands, we just sanitized our hands again afterwards. So that's very important. I think another thing that's important to know is that are people coming to work sick? Is the waiter sick and they're afraid of losing their paycheck? In Israel, unfortunately, some of the employment rules are not to the benefit of a pandemic. In Israel, an employer does not have to pay the employee for the first day and a half that they're sick, which means that somebody who's living paycheck to paycheck and doesn't feel well is going to think, well, I don't feel well, I have a headache, I have a cold, but if I miss a day of work, then I'm going to miss part of my paycheck, so I'm going to go to work. And they come to work when they're sick. And the problem with a situation like that is that people who aren't feeling well, who should not be coming to work, do end up coming. And that's really more of a problem than anything else. Now, if they're wearing a mask properly, then the chances of them transmitting anything to you is low. But it is something to be concerned with. So that's an important thing to remember. Also, the last thing I want to say is that if you don't feel well, you shouldn't be going to a restaurant. And the same thing if you go with other people. If you decide that you want to socialize with other people, keep your groups small. Keep the number of people you're exposed to small as you can. And try to, again, be in well-ventilated areas where you're not like sitting on top of each other. I'm going to give guidelines about socializing on another video. But I think that going to restaurants can be a very pleasant experience. In this day and age, a pleasant experience is not, well, let's just forget about coronavirus and throw our mask out. It's going there, making sure that you feel like your table is a safe place for you. And then once you get to that place, you could relax, enjoy your food, enjoy your company, and enjoy being out of your house. I think that's really important too. I wish everybody good health, and please stay well and stay safe. Take care.